In my opinion, the Like a Dragon series truly shines as a turn-based RPG. Now I'm hoping I can explain myself in today's video because we're going to be looking at the latest entry, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. The code was provided to me by SEGA, though that does not influence any of my opinions you're going to hear in today's video. So with that all being said, what is up guys, Jen here, hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to the channel. As always, got you covered with timestamps down below, so if there's a certain section you want to skip to, feel free to do so. Whatever floats your boat, all I ask is for you to support the channel and hit the thumbs up button. So let's dive straight in, and I would usually cover my history with the series that I'm doing, but I did that quite well in my Like a Dragon Gaiden video, so if you want to check that out, please do. But if you don't, I'll nutshell it for you here. The games I've played is all of the mainline series except 4 and 5. I've played the spin-offs, I've played Judgment, and I really liked the series when it made the change to turn-based because I love myself a turn-based RPG. And the way I concluded that video is that I said that I was ready to move on from the brawler style, move away from the same locations, keep the formula of how the game is kind of structured, but move on from those traits that we've had year after year. And I think Infinite Wealth absolutely smashed it. So let's kick it off with the story, and Yakuza, Like a Dragon story, always delivers. They do it a little bit different here because we are looking at Ichiban and Kiryu. They have this kind of like segmented thing throughout chapters. It can be a bit frustrating from a gameplay aspect, trying to remanage your characters as you kind of switching back and forth between the two, but the way that they tackle the story is always intense. I was always invested. The cutscenes kick ass, the humor is there, and everything else in between. I don't really want to spoil it because it does kind of cap off Kiryu's story if you've been following it since the beginning, and it also kind of just dives in a little bit deeper to Ichiban's, even though it wasn't as strong as Yakuza Like a Dragon. I need to remember the names because of the name change. It was still a strong story nonetheless. So if you've got a great story, you need great characters, and we have returning cast members from the previous Like a Dragon game, and we have a few new ones sprinkled in as well. The character development, especially when you go through side quests and all the kind of chats you get to do throughout the city, which we'll talk about later, character development is always strong, it's always there. And I really like the new characters as well that got introduced in this game. In particular, Tomizawa was one of my favorites, just what he brought to the table and his overall story arc, and if you go through all of his side stories as well, he is a very strong candidate in the game. Same applies to side characters. We have side characters that we've come across throughout the whole Yakuza series, so if you have not played all the games, you might not get the full context, but at the same time, if you haven't, I think there's something to enjoy there. There's returning cast members throughout, and it really took me down memory lane. I think Kiryu's story does this the best because obviously with the lowest key spoilers that I can give, we kind of like go down memory lane with Kiryu and kind of relive a few things and just kind of reflect on life, and it was truly beautiful, and it was nice to see the little nods here and there if you've played all of the games. Obviously, because I didn't play 4 and 5, there was a few things that I didn't get, but the majority of it I was like, hey, I know that guy. So it was really nice to kind of go through and see these side characters once again. Location. We have a new location, and this was the biggest thing for me. We went to Hawaii, and this map is massive. It was nice to get away from the streets of Kamurocho, even though we could return, and we could return to Yokohama as well. I did like Yokohama as an explorable space in the last game. It's nice to see it return. Obviously, it wasn't as important in this one, but Hawaii was where it was at, and there is so much to do, from just seeing the sights, walking down the streets, interacting with those characters, walking around, doing the mini games, doing the side quests, just a little chatter here and there. It is a character in itself, and I hope that we get to go to more locations as the series progresses, because I think a refresh like this, even though it might take more work instead of like recycling the same thing, I think it really adds to just keeping the series as fresh as it can get. Now I'm just scratching the surface with some of the things that I've mentioned when it comes to exploration, but we do have dungeons. We got introduced to dungeons in the previous game, but they were not that great. It was literally just the sewers of Kamurocho and the sewers of Yokohama. It's kind of the same here, but it's kind of like a randomly generated dungeons and 2 of the main locations, so you just kind of dive in deeper. It's more of an end game thing, or if you want to kind of level up your characters and jobs. But when it comes to dungeons in general, it's usually those kind of like scripted segments when you kind of storm a building, or you go to a theater, for example, in this one, and you go through. It's pretty much samey. I don't know what they could do differently to improve upon this, but it is what it is. And I think capping off exploration for us we need to mention about the minigames. They return, though I wasn't like, whoa, at some of these minigames. I mean, I did like the Sicko Snap, and I did like some of the other things that they introduced, but I was a bit underwhelmed when it came to the Sega Arcade Collection. This is something I'm always excited for when I dive into a Like a Dragon game. What could be next? But I think the selection we got in this one was a little bit underwhelming for me. Maybe there were games that were introduced in this one that just didn't hit with me, or I didn't have any nostalgia tied to, but I was a little bit underwhelmed. But as a whole, you're going to always have fun with darts, going to the beach and picking up items, playing the new crazy delivery, way hey, and all of the other things. There's so much to dive into. And then we have two of the biggest things that they added as well. We had the Sujimon arc, where we can catch Sujimon, the enemies that we come across in the game. And then we have the Dondoku Island, which was a time sink in itself, and I didn't really touch it too much. I just kind of did the generic stuff and did the kind of mandatory stuff that it introduces to you. Maybe I will return to one day, but I know that that's an investment in itself. So from exploration, let's look at the combat, and in a nutshell, combat is vastly improved since the last Like a Dragon game. You can move around, which really can add strategy. You can do team up attacks if you're in the vicinity of a teammate. You can bash them against walls. You can pick up weapons if you are close to them. There is so much variation in just the basics of the battle system. And then we dive into the jobs. We have some jobs that return from the last game, and we have a plethora of new jobs. I really like all the cutscenes that get introduced to when these jobs come around, and I also like all of the animations for all the attacks. Now, I like the way that jobs work. They do it better and bigger. That's probably like a linking factor to when it comes to combat, that they improved everything that they had and made it better. And I really enjoyed the system. I wanted to try out all the jobs this time around. I wanted to see which made things best. Do I want to poison that guy and then use a bleeding attack, or I just thought more when it comes to this combat system, instead of feel like I'm just slugging away like an old school turn-based RPG. This is very modern, very it has that action element to it. It's fast paced, and when Kiryu unlocks his attack where you can kind of go into that old brawler style as well, it's really nice to have all this mix of elements and have a good time with it. Definitely want to touch on the weapons and armors. There's so much in this game. The crafting system is pretty much akin to what it was in the last game. I really wish that we could have some epic quests to find some epic weapons or something along those lines. Find a hidden weapon in a dungeon instead of going through the crafting system all the time. I did like what they improved upon. You had almost like a materia system when thinking about it, where you have 3 slots in a weapon and you can put various statistic boosters in there to make the weapon a lot more custom to what you want to use it for. But not much to say. I think this is definitely something that they can improve upon in the next game and really dive in deep with that. So we're capping off with Endgame Content. I rolled credits, I thoroughly enjoyed myself, and I did want a little bit more, but I feel like the endgame was underwhelming, especially if you've gone out your way to complete all the side quests beforehand. You get a couple of ultimate things I think was tied behind the DLC as well, and I'm not a big fan of that, but it is what it is, I guess. Again, I didn't dive too deep into the endgame, so I could be wrong, and I'll hold my hands up at that, but I just wish there was a little bit more for me. Maybe I needed to put more time in. I don't know. We've got to touch on the soundtrack of Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, and it absolutely slaps. The Yakuza soundtracks, the Like a Dragon soundtracks, whatever you want to call them, always deliver, and they deliver here as well. There's some absolute bops when we're battling. There's some absolute bangers of minigame tracks. There's also sweet and somber orchestral tracks that play during cutscenes as well. There is a lot here, and I thoroughly advise you give that soundtrack a listen, because there's probably not a disappointing track in that OST. And you know what? I think that's about everything I want to cover. Let me know in the comment section below what you thought of Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, and let me know if you prefer them going in that turn-based direction, or if you are someone that really wished that they kept to the style that they did. I get it to a certain aspect of if you've been following a game and they suddenly change the gameplay style, it can be quite bittersweet and not you can't accept it straight away. But for me, I think as soon as they made the announcement to change it to turn-based, I was all in because that's my gameplay style, and that's why I'm offering the opinion and my thoughts out there, saying that I think it's at its best, because it definitely does some things really well. There are a few things it doesn't, but that's just the nature of video games. I appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel so you can support me, and if you want more content from me, it's all there. Get involved in the comment section below, and until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side.